Welcome to AI in the Media World, a Future Media Hub's podcast exploring how artificial intelligence is reshaping the world of media. I am your host, and in each episode, we speak with leading thinkers and innovators to understand how AI is changing the way we create, distribute, and experience stories, and what that means for the future of media. Hello and welcome back. This is episode 4 and our last episode of AI in the media world. So far we have looked at how AI is transforming the media industry, why it matters which language AI speak, and how Europe is trying to build its own AI ecosystem instead of only relying on big tech. Today we want to zoom out one more time and ask a different question. What happens when AI stops being a shiny new tool, something to experiment with a little bit, and becomes something we quietly depend on for almost everything we do? From newsroom workflows and recommendation engines to audience data and distribution platforms, AI is slowly turning into part of the invisible infrastructure of media. That brings opportunities, but also a new kind of vulnerability. If so much runs through a few systems and platforms, what does that mean for independence, for public value, and the way media can still make its own choices? To explore that, I'm joined by Ezra Eeman, a strategic director at NPO, who has been thinking a lot about the relationship between media platforms and AI. So, Ezra, welcome. Great to have you with us. Could you briefly start introducing yourself and your work?
Yeah, of course, and thank you for having me. I'm the Director of Strategy and Innovation at NPO, which is the Dutch public broadcaster. And the strategy part is, of course, just thinking about the long-term questions that we need to solve to maintain our relevance as public service media. What does it mean in a changing media landscape? How do you adapt to changing technology, to changing media behavior from the audience, as well as the constellation behind it? And since that's a quickly and very fast landscape, I think it's an ideal combination with innovation because a lot of these things are unknown now. So innovation is all about experiments, iterating, and prototyping your strategy. So I like the combination of both strategy and innovation.
Okay, you're still excited about everything with the speed everything is going?
It's a challenging time, but I also think it puts the pressure on us to really rethink what does it mean to offer a public service media. Is that just linear broadcasting, or do we rethink really what it means from the eye from the audience? How do we bring that service to them in new shapes and new forms? I think that it's a challenge for us, but it's also an opportunity.
It's a challenge, like it's a technical evolution that pushes us to rethink maybe the ways we create media also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there's opportunities. There's so much new things that are possible with new technology. So just being afraid, like a rabbit in the headlights of a car, will not help us. So we really need to think beyond that fear and see what are the opportunities.
Okay, and to get started in our first episode, Christine van Damme she already quoted you. She said that instead of only asking how we can get AI into the media, we should also ask how media itself is becoming AI. I would like to start there. What did you exactly mean with that remark?
Well, I think we've been exploring AI for years now. It's not something that it's something completely new, but we're mainly looking from a traditional media perspective of how can AI help us to do what we already do, but just smarter, more intelligent, faster, in a different way. But that's adding AI to media as it is. And I do think that the reality is that media is becoming part of AI. We're being sucked in AI systems. We're being retrieved as data in AI answers. That means you're becoming part of an AI system, and AI is becoming an interface and a layer across everything that's happening in media. And that's a completely different paradigm. Then it's not just about adding AI to what you do. You're being part of a new system.
And that exposes also, I think, our industry also a little bit because we're less in control. If we are getting part of AI, but we are not controlling AI itself.
Yeah, I would say it exposes us a lot. It's a fundamental shift because if it becomes an interface that becomes between us and the audience, it means everything is mediated by AI, and you're just a part of that system. And so you have to think, how do we remain visible and prominent in that system? How do our audiences still know that it's us behind an answer when you're synthesized in an answer for or when media is generated? How do you still have that direct control and the direct relationship with an audience? I think that's a key question.
And so it's indeed an important key question. And I know this is also work where you're looking very much at yourself. Do you have some insights in how, as a media industry, we could deal with this issue? Are there already use cases you think of that try to tackle this issue a bit, or do you have some best practices there you can think
Well, I
of?
think you have to wonder, how will this play out? You could say, you know what, we're victims of big tech, and this will all play out in a kind of centralized ecosystem where there will be predictive feeds and there will be predictive answer kind of engines, and we're kind of a data pipeline in those ecosystems. You could also say, why wouldn't you use that thinking and technology in a more decentralized way, where our destinations become smarter? We are somehow more in control of that interface and that relationship. Maybe we have a public service media agent that is working in service of our audience and brings together a new media experience. So I think we should think about that alternative reality that's also there.
So, if I understand correctly, we see that AI, for example, ChatGPT is making news itself, generating it maybe from input from our websites as a media industry. And then we also see use cases arising, like, for example, the Time AI
Yeah.
system where, they made themselves an interface looking like a chatbot or is a chatbot. Do you think this is a good practice to do as media agencies?
I think it's certainly good to explore it. I'm not sure that the current way that we're doing it, that the use case is really big for just going through the archives, because Time AI is very much like based on their archives. I wonder how many people come back on a daily basis to ask questions about the Time archive. But thinking about, how does your destination becomes a smart destination? How does it become a conversational destination? How does it provide a new service because it acts on behalf of information? It's not just broadcasting, but it looks at user needs and tries to figure out how to answer that with media. There's an opportunity, yes.
Okay. We've recently was in a panel around AI, and we were also discussing liquid media over there. Like, users and readers want more personalized content, maybe because they're used to, or even I'm used to myself, that if I ask a question to ChatGPT, I can, or another LLM or a chat interface, that I get an answer tailored very much to what I like. Do you think this is how people want to consume media and news in the future, or do you think they would morely want us as media professionals to decide the format for them?
I think there will still be both worlds. I think people still like that something is crafted and specifically tailored by a creative artist for them. I think in a lot of cases, people also like that the context that really defines how something is surfaced. Their need, what do they need at that moment? When you go on your daily commute on the train, you might want a different format than when you drive back in your car at night. When you're on the sofa with your family, you might want to have recommendations for the whole family rather than just for yourself. When you switch from one device to another device, you would like that the format also switches with you. So those are the dynamics. And I would say there's three dynamics that are appearing now with AI. It's, first of all, how do you find information, or how does information find you, media? So it's about surfacing rather than just retrieving. It's also, how does media flow from one state to another state? Like, how does it become audio becomes text, and text becomes audio? And how does it follow you in terms of the different devices that you have, the different context that you're in, the different user need that you might have? Sometimes a thing is very complex and you say, break it down for me in a summary until I have like a understanding it like a 5-year-old. And sometimes you really want a long read because you feel like this is what I need at the moment. And so how do you play with those kind of new dynamics? What do you do with that? I think there is a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, me too. And I think they can also enhance and strengthen myself. I think a research study also showed that while providing short news summaries, it's not stopping people from reading long ones.
No.
It even encourages them.
No, actually, for the news media that have been working with that, and I know like in ships that they've been really at the forefront of that, they saw that there's actually increased reading of the articles that have summaries above them, because people capture in a very short time if it's something they want to continue or not. So it helps people to decide.
Okay, so I think that we can say that this form of liquid and more personalized content is very good for our audience, because it really tailors the content for them. But we do need technology to support us in that, and I think AI technologies is a really good technology to help us with this. But we can't make this completely ourselves, so we must rely a little bit on AI from big tech. It doesn't make that us very dependent on them.
I think you're right. There is a big risk of dependency, but if we're honest, we're already quite dependent on these big tech companies. Look at our on-demand services. They run on cloud services that are, most of them are hosted by big tech companies like Amazon with their services, or Google Cloud services. And so rather than completely being afraid and paralyzed, we should have some strategies for them. And first of all, it's really understanding what your dependencies are. So mapping your dependencies, then seeing what the alternatives are, making sure that you have at least some alternatives for that dependency. And that means also that we need to understand how we build some European alternatives, European cloud services, European AI models, so that we're not having all our eggs in the the US basket. And finally, I would say you need a fallback scenario for when all the digital things stop working. You still need to be able to do some emergency broadcasting or emergency systems.
Would you say that this, because indeed, when you're using technology, you always need to think on those dependency and fallback systems. Do you feel that AI is different type of technology than others, like moving to cloud integrations or more automated flows? Because AI is very much, I think, on the creation side as well, or do you think it's rather the same as other technical evolutions?
Well, what we've seen so far is that the model itself becomes more and more commoditized. There's an infinite number of models by now, so it's not the risk for a vendor lock-in on the model side is, for me, less than the whole stack of services that are connected to it. And of course, you buy into the Microsoft stack, or you buy into the Google stack, and there you have to see how easily can you if everything is wired into those services, how easily do you unplug that? And if it doesn't work anymore, or they bring the price level 10x or something else, any of these scenarios, how quickly can you switch to something else? What are your alternatives? And you should have risk management those dependencies.
Okay, and for you at NPO, are you very actively working on this? Are you
We have a
concerned?
dedicated group that really looks at all these dependencies. First of all, of course, on everything that's cloud-based, because that's already running and happening in our operation. But of course, we will also do the same for how we use AI in our workflows. Currently, a lot of these things are still experimental or in a sandbox environment. Once they become structurally, we will also think about how to make sure that we're not completely dependent on just one system or one workflow.
Okay. And if you're looking at some best practices there, I assume, of course, if you would be completely in control yourself of those systems, you have more control, but it's also not possible to make these systems yourself. Do you advise a more hybrid approach? I hear the word modular also quite a lot when people are talking about AI workflows, where you can quickly interchange different AI systems.
That's a bit how we because at NPO we're working with different organizations because of the way that we're structured, and that means the NPO provides a sort of service for the broadcast organizations that are part of the umbrella of NPO. And we're already thinking about having a kind of a middleware. You have to see it almost like a building, like a Lego building blocking thing.
I do like Legos.
Yeah. So underneath, you can change the models quickly.
Okay.
And above it, you can build applications and different interfaces. But you control the kind of middleware where you can tune which models you can switch, which models are happening, and you can actually also facilitate the building on top of it.
Okay, so you provide the in-between layer.
Yeah.
Actually, you make a bit the curation of which tech can be used, and then others can build new front ends or interfaces on top of that. What would you recommend to more smaller media agency that maybe doesn't have the capacity to build middleware like this?
I think you just have to understand where do you gonna use AI in a very critical workflow, and at least have one alternative way for if that stops working, if that becomes incredibly expensive, or if it stops working. Because sometimes there's a startup that you think does something crazy and fantastic, and then a month later they stop existing. You know, that's really an issue. So you should always have at least maybe a simple list of this is our core workflow, and this is the plan B if it stops working. And having that list is already a kind of risk management.
Important thing. Yeah. Okay, it's interesting you top the startups ecosystem, and let's talk quickly about that, because there was also recently an article in Flanders about this, about the huge boom of AI startups. Do you, as a public broadcaster, easily work together with startups, focusing on AI, or are you more hesitant and waiting for a certain maturity in the technology?
Well, again, it depends. If it's an operational thing, then it becomes quickly big at the scale that we work, of course, and then we have to go to tenders and all these kind of things, which doesn't exclude startups, but it's just a bit more complicated. But we run extensive number of experiments and innovation experiments, and there the threshold is much lower because the amounts are lower, and that's an easy way to start working with startups that do something new.
Yeah. Or more, it can also work more in experimental use cases, pilots.
And if we can go, because we go through different innovation stages, if we really can validate the use case and we can make a business case, then there's an opportunity for a startup to become part of our workflow.
Okay, that's interesting, especially for the startups listening. I hope they use this advice. We also talked before that on the middleware side, where you provided an interface or a toolkit to work with. Let's talk about also guidelines. Do you, as a public broadcaster, work there with a strategic vision on how to use AI, what can and cannot be done? Do other media organizations depend on your guidelines, or how do you see this?
So that's actually the first thing that we did. When this whole generative AI wave came, we already had an AI strategy, but it was not up to date to the new generative AI wave, is making some core principles on how do we want to work with AI. It was about, we want to make sure that we maintain our public service mission. We want to ensure that quality and trust prevails, that transparency and data. It's being mindful about the problems that are a part of these systems, like hallucinations and the bias that's in it, but also see the way that we can explore and use it for our strategy. So we really think AI should help our strategy, not the other way around. And that's about how can it increase our reach, like those audiences that we're currently not reaching. How does it help us to provide a better experience, or to make our experience more accessible for those people that currently don't have the access? And also, how do we create value a bit more efficiently? I think that's also a playbook that we're looking into.
Okay, and look, those guidelines, they help you also have a good approach on working with AI that facilitates that a bit. It's also, there's also sort of other people see it more as like a barrier for innovation, because guidelines also provide rules and guidelines.
Well, we have a pyramid, and at the base is compliance, because really that's something that we have to maintain. Also, there will be new EU law, the AI Act and things like this, which we really have to maintain and be very strict about. The principles are more something that is on the top. That's like understanding from which principles we want to work. They're not operational guidelines. They're not like rules, you cannot use A or B. That's something that's in between, and we leave a lot of freedom for the different organizations and the different newsrooms to really interpret their guidelines, because a guideline for a newsroom like NOS, which is all about factual correctness, is something completely different than for a satirical program or humor program that wants to do some special new things and funny things for the eye clips.
Okay. That's indeed a more that really depends on the organization itself and how they use AI. And
as long as it fits within those core principles and the compliance, then the guidelines should be really tailored.
That's the baseline.
Those are the baselines, and that's the kind of top vision. And then in between, there should be flexibility to really tailor to your environment, to your workflow, to the kind of public and audience that you have as well. Kids have a different kind of expectation and maybe also safety barrier than a more mature audience that likes a bit dark humor.
So. I think that's indeed a difference. So you might need to see which guardrails you use when, and that you don't mix them up. You also quickly touched the European AI Act. We've now talked about within your organization the rules there. If you just look, if we're zooming out on a higher level, more European level, do you feel a bit similar vision across countries and organization on AI? Do you feel you can, with your colleagues in other countries and organizations, you align very much, or do you think still very mixed?
Oh, I do see a difference where I would say the Nordic countries are much more lean forward and experimenting, exploring what's possible with AI. There's countries, I would say, more in the south and also in the east of Europe, which were much more reluctant, and they're a bit more careful on how to explore AI. They will use it for some backend processes, but will not go with an AI chatbot because they feel that's something that really wouldn't fit with their values or their audience. So it's somewhere in between, I guess. And there's also people that think much more about the security issues of AI systems because they're closer to a certain border, and others that feel, you know what, we just want to see how it works for our audience. And they're less worried about these big whole world problems that are attached to AI.
And when talking about other countries, a lot of feedback always in Europe is that we don't collaborate maybe enough, and that we're all very separated or isolated. Well, maybe the strength lies there in the unity. But of course, when you're collaborating, maybe you're also getting that dependency issues again because you're not yourself in control. What's a bit your vision on it? Should we collaborate a lot on AI, have shared infrastructure, shared development, or should we work a little bit more isolated and keep as much control internally?
I think we should certainly collaborate on defining some common standards and protocols and having that engaged discussion with big tech companies on a few core principles. Like you cannot take our content without an authorization. You should give proper attribution. We should be able to work together on what's a trusted environment and how does it look like. So there's a few of these core things that you really should structure together, and that might be part of a protocol or an ISO standard or anything like that. I also think it's interesting to have core infrastructure like really European cloud services or maybe even European language models, certainly for smaller language areas. There we should see how we can invest together and partner together. I think anything in between where it's more the application layer or quickly iterating on things, there you need speed. And I don't think always having a kind of, they say a Polish kind of army gathering day where you have to talk with all the generals doesn't really work to get up to speed. Something in between again.
Yeah, something in between. It's a very European answer. But I think, right, you touch speed, but isn't that highly important in AI today? Because I feel personally that AI is the fastest evolving technology I've ever seen.
Yeah, so that's why we believe that's the way we work at NPO as well. We rather have a lot of experiments where we explore very fast and very iteratively to understand what works and then scale up, then directly do a multi-year strategy where we plot for the next few years on something that we don't have the basic information about, like how will it evolve? What is actually working? Are we sure about this? So I do think that you need some speedboats out there that innovate fast. And that's why the startup landscape is actually quite important. Because as big organizations, you also have to know we're maybe not the fastest one around. We have to partner to be faster.
Yeah, so then we're back to the startup. So that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Could be an opportunity. Is this also a recommendation you would give media companies to get started working with AI? It's like iterate fast, try, learn, fall, get up again, move before making those big scalable infrastructures and projects?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do understand people that just look at our return on investment. You know what? That's good. Do 60, 70% of your focus on creating that efficiency on known work processes and workflows where you know here the technology is already quite mature, translation, transcription, all these kind of things, and make it happen. But also explore the unknowns and the ones you're not sure about. And there you have to do just fast experiments and audience facing, so you also know what kind of feedback you get.
Okay. So that's a good recommendation, I think, for all the listeners from media organizations. They can use this and have maybe a bit the startup approach of iterating, fast experimenting. And once they feel there's maturity, make a good and scalable plan and look at that ROE.
Yeah.
While, of course, always keeping the dependency and vulnerabilities in mind, of course.
And see learning also as a return on investment. People say, yeah, but it doesn't work. Like,
True.
why would we build a chatbot? Well, I'm not sure that those chatbots currently are very valuable, but the companies that are doing it, they learn which questions are people asking, when do they come back, how do we actually learn from that as a newsroom, how do you make sure that our archives are structured the right way. They're learning a lot of things that they can use for the next phase.
Okay, that's actually a very good thing to keep in mind, I think, for everyone, that learning itself is also a return
absolutely
on your investment. Okay, to go a little bit towards the end of our chat, time flies, unfortunately, always so fast. But we've talked a lot about the dependency. Would you say that today the relationship between the media industry, and the AI technology providers is a healthy relationship, or is there still some work to do?
No, I don't think that's a healthy relationship. And that's mainly because they're driven by a lot of money investment and they need to recoup it directly. The way OpenAI already shifted from their mission to kind of build AGI for humanity to now kind of a shopping portal almost. It shows that there's other incentives at play. They don't care so much about society and what happens with society. So no, it's not a healthy relation.
And so maybe we as a media industry should deal with that and try to,
we should bring them to the table.
Yeah.
We should bring them to the table and really say, like, if you want to work with us, if you want to use our material, because in the end they do need data, they do need fresh content, they do need. It only happens if there's a certain number of criteria that works for us as well. Otherwise, it's not an equal relation.
Okay. Is there some other last words or advice you would give related to dependency, working with big tech and working with AI, you would like to give to our audience?
I would say share more of your own experiments and your learnings.
Okay.
One of the things that we currently not know is really having enough data of how AI systems work. When do you get mentioned? When do you get cited? When do people click through? A lot of companies might have having some data on that. If we share that more, we have a shared understanding of where the opportunities are, but also where the challenges are.
Okay, so sharing knowledge with each other and then empowering us as a whole industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Together. Okay, Ezra, thank you for helping us look at AI, not just as a toolkit, but something that quickly becomes part of the whole infrastructure where media depends on, and also the risk, but also opportunities that are there. For our listeners who maybe were inspired by this session, where could listeners follow you and your thoughts?
I would say I'm most active on LinkedIn, and I have a Wayfinder newsletter which I publish every week, which is really about that fast changing landscape. So if you want to follow me, that's the best way to do it.
Okay, so we'll keep that in mind. Follow Wayfinder on LinkedIn, and then we stay in touch with your thoughts.
Sure. Thank you.
Across all 4 episodes, one red thread keeps coming back. AI is powerful, but it does not decide on its own in what kind of media world we end up. That is still about human choices, which systems we adopt, which values we build into them, how transparent we are with our audiences, and how much control we are willing to give away or to keep. If you want to listen back to the other episodes or share them with your colleagues, you can find the full series on our usual podcast channels and through future media hubs. Thank you for listening and for staying curious about how AI is reshaping the media world. I was Maren, your host. Thank you so much for listening, and until the next time, stay curious and take care.
Future Media Hubs. Innovation through collaboration.